What happens to Cyrus after the Insidious 6 ending? Warning, major spoilers. Cyrus Lamb is defeated at the end of Insidious out of the further, but he is not permanently destroyed. Gemma sends Cyrus and the supernatural entities back into the further, where his own followers turn against him. The mid-credit scene then reveals that Cyrus is still conscious and trapped inside the further, strapped into the dead dentist's chair. Keyface eventually closes and locks the red door, leaving Cyrus imprisoned in the supernatural realm. So what actually happens to Cyrus after the ending of Insidious out of the further? The answer is much darker than simply saying that Gemma defeats him. Cyrus doesn't get killed in the conventional sense because he's already a dead man. Instead, his punishment is that he remains trapped inside the further, exactly where he spent the entire movie desperately trying not to be. And the mid-credit scene makes his fate even worse. Cyrus's plan completely falls apart. To understand his ending, we have to go back to Cyrus's goal. Cyrus Lamb is a cult leader who became obsessed with defeating death. He believes that the further can give him and his followers a way back into the world of the living. But there's one major problem. Cyrus needs a person who can cross the boundary between the further and the physical world. That's where Gemma comes in. Gemma possesses a rare supernatural ability known as the Courier ability. She can enter the further and bring things back with her. That ability makes her incredibly valuable to Cyrus. He doesn't simply want to kill Gemma, he wants to use her. His entire plan revolves around turning Gemma into a doorway between the two worlds. But Cyrus misunderstands one crucial thing about her power. He assumes that Gemma can only bring things out of the further. She eventually realizes that she can also send things back in, and that completely changes the final confrontation. How does Gemma defeat Cyrus? Gemma ultimately turns Cyrus's own plan against him. Rather than allowing him to use her ability to escape, she uses her courier power to send the supernatural invasion back into the further. And she doesn't just send Cyrus back, she effectively transports the house and the entities inside it into the further. This is important because the house has become the physical center of Cyrus's attempt to cross into the living world. By removing it from reality, Gemma destroys the escape route Cyrus was counting on. The real world is left behind. Gemma and Maya survive. Cyrus is trapped again. And suddenly, the followers who believed Cyrus could deliver their freedom realize that he has failed. Why do Cyrus's followers turn against him? Cyrus has spent years convincing his followers that he can give them something extraordinary. He promises them a way out of the further. He promises them another chance at life. But after Gemma defeats him, that promise becomes obviously impossible. They're right back where they started. They haven't escaped, they haven't returned to the living world, and Cyrus has failed to deliver what he promised. So the entities turn against him. They attack Cyrus and tear him apart. At first, this looks like the end of the villain. But there's an important distinction. Cyrus is already dead. So destroying his physical form doesn't necessarily mean his supernatural existence has ended. And the mid-credit scene confirms exactly that. Is Cyrus actually dead? Not in the way audiences normally think about death. Cyrus is a supernatural being existing within the further. The movie shows that his followers can physically attack him, but that doesn't completely erase him. Instead, Cyrus remains trapped inside the further. This is why the mid-credit scene is so important. It shows that Cyrus is still conscious. He's still capable of suffering, and most importantly, he still exists. So the most accurate description of his fate is, Cyrus is defeated, imprisoned, and tortured, not completely erased. What happens to Cyrus in the mid-credit scene? The mid-credit scene gives us the final piece of his story. Cyrus is shown inside the further. He's restrained in a dentist's chair, and waiting for him is the horrifying dead dentist. The dentist was already one of the movie's most disturbing supernatural entities. Earlier in the story, the character is connected to Gemma's dental profession and becomes part of Cyrus's attempt to terrorize her. But now, the situation has been completely reversed. Cyrus is the one sitting in the chair. The dead dentist approaches him with his equipment, and then he begins drilling into Cyrus's teeth. It's deliberately grotesque, but there's also a very clear sense of poetic justice. Cyrus spent the movie using supernatural creatures to manipulate and frighten other people. Now, he has no control over the creature standing in front of him. Why is the dead dentist torturing Cyrus? The dentist's role isn't simply to provide one final jump scare. It represents the reversal of Cyrus's entire story. Cyrus believed he could control the entities of the further. He believed he could command them. He believed they needed him. But once he fails to deliver their promised escape, they turn on him. The dead dentist therefore becomes part of his punishment. And there's an especially clever connection here. Cyrus previously used the dead dentist against Gemma. Now, that same creature is being used against Cyrus. The villain has essentially become the victim of the very supernatural world he thought he controlled. That's why the scene feels more than simple torture. It's supernatural karma. What does Keyface do? Then the movie brings back another familiar face. Keyface appears in the further. Fans will recognize the character from Insidious: The Last Key. Keyface is strongly associated with doors and the boundaries between worlds, and his appearance here is extremely significant. After Cyrus has been defeated and tortured, Keyface closes the famous red door, and then he locks it. That's the final image of Cyrus's story. He's on the wrong side of the door. Why is the red door so important? The red door has been one of the most recognizable images in the Insidious franchise. It represents a passage into the further. Throughout the series, characters have struggled with crossing that boundary. But Cyrus spends this particular movie trying to do something very specific. He wants to escape the further. He wants to return to the living world. He wants Gemma to give him a route out. So having Keyface close the red door on him is the perfect conclusion. Cyrus spends the entire movie trying to open the door. Instead, the door closes behind him. He is trapped. Why Cyrus' fate matters to the ending. Cyrus's punishment is important because it completes the movie's central reversal. At the beginning, Cyrus is the person who appears to understand the further. He has knowledge, he has followers, he has a plan. And Gemma is the vulnerable person being hunted. By the end, everything is reversed. Gemma understands her ability. Cyrus loses control. His followers betray him. The dead dentist tortures him, and Keyface locks the door. The person who thought he could control the supernatural world becomes a prisoner of it. That's why his fate works so well. Final answer. So, what happens to Cyrus after the Insidious 6 ending? Cyrus Lamb is not permanently destroyed. Gemma defeats him by turning her courier ability against him. She sends Cyrus, his followers, and the supernatural invasion back into the further, effectively destroying his plan to escape into the real world. His followers then realize that Cyrus has failed to give them the freedom he promised, so they turn against him and tear him apart. But because Cyrus is already a supernatural entity, that isn't the end. The mid-credits scene reveals that Cyrus is still alive inside the further. He's strapped into the dead dentist's chair. The dentist, an entity previously connected to Cyrus's attacks on Gemma, begins torturing him by drilling his teeth. Then Keyface closes and locks the red door, leaving Cyrus trapped inside the further. And that's the most important detail. Cyrus spends the entire movie trying to escape the further. He wants to return to the world of the living. He wants to control the boundary between life and death. He wants Gemma to become his doorway. But his plan completely backfires. He doesn't escape, he doesn't gain control, he doesn't get resurrected. Instead, he ends up imprisoned in the further and tortured by the very entities he once believed he could control. The red door is the final symbol of his fate. Cyrus wanted it opened. Keyface closes it. Cyrus wanted freedom. He gets imprisonment. He wanted to control the dead. The dead turn against him. And he wanted to escape the further. The further becomes his prison. So, while Cyrus isn't necessarily gone forever, his immediate story is over. For Gemma and Maya, the danger has been stopped. For Cyrus, however, the nightmare has just begun. And if the Insidious franchise ever decides to bring him back, the explanation is already